Hello students. So far we have read that Belloc proposes to write a small piece, though he planned to write a book like Erasmus about ignorance, but he says that I am handicapped and I am not that much able to write a complete book, but yet still I will write a little article on it. And why he wants to write this, the reason behind this, that he says that the scope and multitude of this thing, that what we don't know or what are our ignorances, it's so vast that it easily tempts one to write on it. Now, the modern system of examination, already menaced, has been very justly blamed by the wisest and the best. One of the less wise and not so good shall here say something in its favor. Anyone who has sat for an examination has had a vivid revelation of his own ignorance. I have written answers to perhaps 100 examination papers in my time, and my attitude towards each of the wretched printed things as it lay before me, I being then surrounded by dozens of other victims, each at his little desk with an underpaid invigilator glaring at us from a platform above, was one of violent bewilderment, loss of foothold, sinking into the abyss. I would see something like this, discuss the action of Berengarius at the Council of Blois. I knew vaguely what council meant. I had been to Blois, but beyond that, stumped. Or again, give the principal attempts at the trisection of the plane angle by the epicycloidal method. I could not do so. Or again, much more straightforward, mention in their order the places visited by St. Paul in his nth missionary journey. Nothing doing. Now, he is talking about the examination system which we are facing today. He says that the modern system of examination, which is already which is already very violent, which is already very terrifying, has been very justly blamed by the wisest and the best. He says the wisest and the best people, they have blamed it, the examination system, that it has many flaws, it has many drawbacks like this. But he is not talking about those wisest and the best people, because they have their own problems, they have their own aspects to talk about this thing. But he says, I am talking about the less wise and not so good here. They will say something in its favor, because the people who are less knowledgeable, who are less wise, only they can enjoy that discovery of their ignorance. So he says, as far as the discovery of ignorance is concerned, so the persons or the students, the pupils who are less wise, only they can say something in its favor, in the favor of the modern examination system. Anyone who has sat for examination has had a vivid revelation of his own ignorance. And why he is favoring this examination system? Because anyone who has sat to give an examination, to take an examination, he has had a vivid revelation of his own ignorance. Because exams are a tool which helps a person to realize, to know his own ignorance. And that's why he says that those people who are less wise and who are a simple kind of folks, they say something in the favor of the examination system, because to them it is a helpful thing to discover their own ignorance. I have written answers to perhaps 100 examination papers in my time. He says, in my time, when I was a student or when I was going through this examination system, then I have written nearly 100 of examination papers. And my attitude towards each of the wretched printed things as it lay before me, and he says that wretched little thing, what? The question paper. वो जो क्वेश्चन पेपर मेरे सामने होता था उसके बारे में द फीलिंग्स विच आई हैव वाज व्हाट वाज वन ऑफ वायलेंट बेविल्डरमेंट. वो जो बेविल्डरमेंट मीन्स अमेजमेंट, अमेज्ड, क्वाइट शॉक्ड, है ना. मेरी जो भावना होती थी उस प्रिंटेड पीस ऑफ पेपर के प्रति, क्वेश्चन पेपर के प्रति, वो क्या होती थी? वाज वन ऑफ वायलेंट बेविल्डरमेंट, लॉस ऑफ फुट होल्ड, मीन्स एज इफ आई हैव लॉस्ट द फुट होल्ड from underneath my foot, and sinking into the abyss, and I have felt as if I am sinking down in a very deep trench, a very deep cut in the earth. जैसे मैं किसी गहरी खाई में, गहरे अंधकार में डूबता जा रहा हूँ, ऐसा मुझे फील होता था whenever I used to sit down to give the exam paper. Along with those dozens of other victims, each at his little desk with an underpaid invigilator glaring at us from a platform above. Whenever we used to give the exam, or this is the scene of an examination hall, that dozens of students sit down there, and an invigilator is appointed to keep an eye on them. He says, I would see something like this, that discuss the action of Berengarius at the Council of Blois. Means now he is giving the example of some questions which are there in the question papers. He said that like one question is there that discuss the action of Berengarius at the Council of Blois. This Berengarius was a French Christian theologian. So he said this is the question asking about his this council which has happened at a city in France. Blois is a city in France. So he says, if this question comes there in the examination paper, I knew vaguely what council means. He said, okay, I know that what is council. Council is a meeting or a discussion of, among people. So I know what is council. And I had been to Blois. I had also gone to Blois. I have visited Blois. But beyond that means about that council, about Berengarius, stumped, bowled out. I don't know anything. I am clueless. Or again, give the principal attempts at the trisection of the plane angle by the epicycloidal method. ये एक geometrical question है, मैथ्स का क्वेश्चन है जिसमें हम एक सर्कल बना के और उसको चाप काटते हैं. तो उसका जो क्वेश्चन है उसके बारे में कह रहा है वो. आई कुड नॉट डू सो. उसमें क्वेश्चन था कि आप ऐसे ऐसे एक एंगल काटिए एक चाप लगाते हुए ऐसे, बट ही सेज आई कुड नॉट डू, मुझसे नहीं होता. और अगेन मच मोर स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड, और फिर वो कराए एक और बिल्कुल ही सिंपल सीधा सीधा जो क्वेश्चन है वो क्या होता है, मेंशन इन देयर ऑर्डर द प्लेसेस विजिटेड बाय सेंट पॉल इन हिज एंथ मीन्स 10th, 11th, 9th, 100th, है ना. ऐसे उनकी कौन सी किसी भी एक जर्नी के बारे में पूछा गया क्वेश्चन है कि जो सेंट पॉल थे वो अपनी इस जर्नी के दौरान कहाँ कहाँ से होते हुए गए, मतलब पहले कहाँ गए, फिर कहाँ गए, फिर कहाँ गए, समथिंग लाइक दिस. नथिंग डूइंग, बट ही सेज इवन आई डोंट नो दिस स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन और द आंसर्स टू दिस स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन. आई से that the soul receives great profit by correction of this kind. No man who has been examined but has at least come upon the knowledge of his own ignorance, which is the beginning of learning. There are some indeed so strong-hearted and so same that they approach examinations daily from the very standpoint of ignorance, like those bluff travelers who, meeting the aristocracy of a foreign land, grin openly at them for mountebanks, keep their end up superbly in the vast saloons of Rome, of Warsaw, of Vienna, and go out contented with a smile yet broader than that which dignified their entrance. Of such was the young student of divinity, later possessed of a cure of souls in the Isle of Man and quaintly affecting medieval customs, who being set a certain examination paper to test his qualifications for holy orders, read its terms very carefully and discovered that of 6 questions he was to select 3. Of those 6 questions, one half meant nothing to him whatsoever. They mentioned things of which he had no more heard than had the Colossians or Ephesians or whoever they were of the first century yet heard of the Holy Ghost. But the other 3 contained each a word which he had heard before. He carefully put a little cross against each question. They were as follows. What do we know of the Council of Chalcedon? Was Sozomen justified in his treatment of the Apollinarians? What is the distinction between the Cyprianic and Augustinian attitude towards the Western Patriarchate? So now again continuing with that examination thing, he says that I say that the soul receives great profit by correction of this kind. Means giving examinations, we have a correction of our souls, means we come to know that what we don't know. No man who has been examined but has at least come upon the knowledge of his own ignorance, which is the beginning of learning. He says, what is the bliss of giving examinations? That you come to know about your own ignorance, and that is the beginning of learning. Because once you start knowing this thing, once you have this knowledge that what you don't know, then slowly and slowly you gain all the knowledge. There are some indeed so strong-hearted and so same that they approach examinations daily from the very standpoint of ignorance, like those bluff travelers who, meeting the aristocracy of a foreign land, grin openly at them for mountebanks. So he says there are still some people who are so strong-hearted and same means without any difference, that they approach examinations daily from the very standpoint of ignorance. They go for examinations every time just to discover their ignorance only, है ना. मतलब कुछ लोग तो ऐसे होते हैं, भाई हम क्या करते हैं, हम मेहनत करते हैं. कुछ लोग होते हैं पढ़ते हैं, फिर वो एग्ज़ाम देते हैं, लर्न करते हैं, अटेम्प्ट करते हैं, कोशिश करते हैं कि एग्जामिनेशन में कुछ आंसर दे पाएँ. लेकिन कुछ लोग क्या होते हैं जो नहीं स्टडी करते हैं, जो नहीं लर्न करते हैं, वो क्या करते हैं, दे गो मीन्स दे आर सो स्ट्रॉन्ग हार्टेड that they go there just to know their ignorance only. अपना जो ignorance है, जो अज्ञानता है, सिर्फ उसकी जानकारी लेने के लिए वो वहाँ एग्जामिनेशन हॉल में पहुँचते हैं. Like those bluff travelers. Bluff means liar, झूठे जो ट्रेवलर्स होते हैं ना, who meeting the aristocracy of a foreign land. जैसे वो मान लो कहीं किसी फॉरेन लैंड में जाते हैं और वहाँ की एरिस्टोक्रेसी मीन्स वहाँ के जो राजसी लोग हैं, जो शाही लोग, उनसे जब वो मिलते हैं, then they grin openly at them for mountebanks. Then just to deceive them, they openly grin at them means बिना किसी सेम के, जैसे किसी भी चीज़ के बारे में उनको पता नहीं है, तो वे very happily grin and pose, keep their end up superbly in the vast saloons of Rome or Warsaw of Vienna, and go out contented with a smile yet broader than that which dignified their entrance. And still they don't know anything, still they have a chat, still they have a discussion, and still they depart in a very happy manner from that place. Then they have entered, means जिस smile के साथ they have entered their discussion, their place, they leave that place even more contented. Of such was the young student of divinity, later possessed of a cure of souls in the Isle of Man and quaintly affecting medieval customs. Now he is giving an example of a student who has been studying religions, है ना, जो धर्म की अध्ययन कर रहा था, उसके बारे में वो बता रहा है. Who was later possessed of a cure of souls in the Isle of Man and quaintly affecting medieval customs. Means later on he qualified himself as a man who can cure the souls, means and who have affected or adopted the medieval customs for himself, means what he want to say that ultimately he has been passed as a man of divinity, but what has happened to him when he sat for an examination, that who being set a certain examination paper to test his qualifications for holy orders, when he was being ordained as a saint or as a clergyman, जब उसको पादरी के रूप में, है ना, या पुजारी जैसे अपने होते हैं, उस तरह से चर्च में जब उनका अडोरमेंट हुआ, जब उनको उनकी क्वालिफिकेशंस का टेस्ट हुआ, देन he read the terms of the paper very carefully and discovered that of 6 questions he was to select 3. This was the instruction of the paper, that out of 6 questions he has to attempt only 3. Of those 6 questions, one half meant nothing to him whatsoever. They mentioned things of which he had no more heard than had the Colossians or the Ephesians or whoever they were of the first century yet heard of the Holy Ghost. He said out of those 6 questions he has to attempt just 3 only. So the half part of that paper he don't need to do anything of that, whether it is related about Colossians or about Ephesians or anything, है ना. These Colossians जो है, this was the epistle to Colossians. This is the 12th book of the New Testament, and this Ephesians, the epistle to Ephesians, this is the 10th book of New Testament. Now this New Testament is the Bible, है ना. क्रिश्चियन धर्म की जो धार्मिक ग्रंथ है, जैसे अपने यहाँ गीता है, मुस्लिम धर्म में कुरान है ना, इन द सेम मैनर द क्रिश्चियंस हैव बाइबल. सो उस बाइबल के 2 रूप थे भी, वन वाज ओल्ड टेस्टामेंट एंड देन देयर वाज द न्यू टेस्टामेंट. वो उसी का अडेप्टेशन था न्यू टेस्टामेंट. तो वो उसके बारे में कह रहा है कि उसको जैसे इन चीज़ों के बारे में नहीं पता, बट ही हैज़ ए बिट ऑफ नॉलेज और ही हैज़ जस्ट हर्ड ऑफ द होली घोस्ट ऑफ जीसस क्राइस्ट आफ्टर हिज क्रूसिफिकेशन. तो वो उस धार्मिक चीज़ों के बारे में कुछ नहीं जानता था, पुराने वालियों के बारे में, लेकिन नए वालियों के बारे में उसने सिर्फ सुना हुआ था. बट द अदर 3 कंटेंड ईच वर्ड विच ही हैड हर्ड बिफोर. लेकिन जो अगले 3 क्वेश्चन थे, है ना, मतलब लुक हाउ ही इज टेकिंग अस टू द नॉलेज ऑफ हिज इग्नोरेंस, है ना, कि 6 क्वेश्चंस में से 3 ऐसे थे जिनके बारे में उसे कुछ नहीं पता था. But the 3 was there about which he had heard a word only, not on the whole question. उस क्वेश्चन में कुछ वर्ड्स, और कुछ नहीं तो कम से कम एक वर्ड ऐसा था जो उसने पहले सुन रखा था. He carefully put a little cross against each such question. और उसने बहुत ही ध्यान से ऐसे जो ये 3 क्वेश्चन थे उनके सामने क्रॉस लगा लिया, आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए कि मुझे कौन से क्वेश्चंस अटेम्प्ट करने. They were as follows. Now the questions were what? That what do you know of the Council of Chalcedon? Now again this Chalcedon was a church council which was held in the city of Chalcedon in the year of 451. Means a very old thing it was. Was Sozomen justified in his treatment of the Apollinarians? Now this Sozomen was a historian, and Apollinarians was a tribe, we can say, or a creed, we can say, or a belief in which they used to believe that Jesus has a normal human body but a divine soul. Means there was nothing spiritual or nothing divine about जीसस, है ना. जीसस क्राइस्ट को जैसे वो एक तरह से भगवान मानते थे ना, अवतार मानते थे एक तरह से. तो एक जो सेक्ट था, एक जो विचारधारा थी, वो क्या थी कि वो ये मानती थी कि जीसस क्राइस्ट जो था वो आम ह्यूमन आदमी था, जैसे हम और होते हैं वैसा ही था, लेकिन बस उसका जो माइंड जो था वो डिवाइन था, मतलब उसके दिमाग को कोई देवीय जो वरदान था वो मिला हुआ था. तो वो जो सोजोमन था, जो हिस्टोरियन था, उसने अपनी उस बुक्स में, अपनी उस हिस्ट्री ऑफ क्रिश्चियन में अपोलिनेरियंस को जिस तरह से ट्रीट किया है, was it correct or not? What is the distinction between the Cyprianic and Augustinian attitude towards the Western patriarchy? Now what is patriarchy? Patriarchy is the system in which father happens to be supreme of the family or anyone, है ना, मेल डोमिनेंस जिसको हम कहते हैं, पिता का जो आधिपत्य होता है उसके बारे में जो बात कर रहा है. तो वो कह रहा है कि व्हाट इज द डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन द साइप्रियनिक एंड द ऑगस्टिनियन एटीट्यूड। साइप्रियनिक जो था वो सेंट साइप्रियन था, ये एक बिशप था और एक क्रिश्चियन राइटर था। ऑगस्टीन अगेन सेंट ऑगस्टीन था। तो इन दोनों की अलग अलग जो विचारधाराएं थी उनके बारे में आप, उनका जो डिफरेंस था उसके बारे में आप क्या जानते हो? दीज वर द 3 क्वेश्चंस। नाउ व्हाट ही हैज रिटन इन आंसर टू देम, he wrote each of these questions out in a fair round clerky hand, leaving a little space below each. So what he did first of all, that he has written these questions to in his answer book and a very round, in a means in a very beautiful clerky hand, जैसी जो clerks की writing होती है ना, because clerks write so much, so their writing is supposed to be good, and leaving a space below each of the questions. उनके नीचे उसने एक स्पेस छोड़ा था, किस लिए? To give the answers. Then each of these spaces he solemnly wrote for the first the answer nothing. Now look what he has written as answers. अब वो आंसर क्या लिखता है? What was the first question? That what do you know of the Council of Chalcedon? चेल्सीडन की जो काउंसिल थी, चेल्सीडन की जो संगोष्ठी थी, उसके बारे में आप क्या जानते हो? What he replied? Nothing. उसने आंसर क्या लिखा? Nothing. सेकेंड क्वेश्चन था, वाज सोजोमन जस्टिफाइड इन हिज ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ द अपोलिनेरियंस? क्या अपोलिनेरियंस के बारे में सोजोमन के जो विचार थे वो जस्टिफाइड हैं, सही हैं? ही सेड नो. दिस वाज हिज आंसर, नो. द थर्ड क्वेश्चन वाज दैट व्हाट इज द डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन द साइप्रियनिक एंड ऑगस्टिनियन एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स द वेस्टर्न पैट्रियार्की? जो वेस्ट की पितृसत्तात्मकता थी, जो पितृ मेल डोमिनेंसी जो थी, उसके बारे में पेट्रार्क ये ऑगस्टीन और साइप्रियनिक, इनके विचारों में क्या डिफरेंस था? फॉर द थर्ड नन. उसने क्या आंसर दिया? नन. कोई डिफरेंस नहीं था, है ना. हैविंग दस कंप्लीटेड हिज पेपर ही वेंट अप एंड प्रेजेंटेड इट टू द इन्विजिलेटर, बोर्ड एंड वॉकड आउट. इस तरह से उसने मतलब तीनों क्वेश्चंस के आंसर दिए, एक बहुत ही सुंदर सी राइटिंग में दिए, है ना. और फिर वो उठा, उसने अपना क्वेश्चन पेपर जो था इन्विजिलेटर को दिया, उनको झुक के अभिवादन किया एंड वॉकड आउट, और बाहर चला गया. द फ्लेजलिंग क्लेरिक्स अराउंड हिम एनविड द फैसिलिटी ऑफ हिज एरुडिशन. लेकिन अब इससे क्या हुआ? जो अदर पीपल जो वहाँ बैठे हुए थे, दे वर द फ्लेजलिंग मीन्स who were new and who were not this much experienced, they were means shocked. They have envied that how intelligent he is. In such a short time he has given answer to all the questions. The rapidity of his completed task and his early liberation into the happy sunlight and on Oxford June. मतलब इतना जल्दी उसने जो आंसर दिए, इतना चतुर वो था, और इतना जल्दी वो बाहर ऑक्सफोर्ड की जो खुली सनलाइट थी उसमें चला गया. इससे दे ऑल फेल्ट जेलस, बट ही वाज फेल्ड. दिस इज व्हाट हैज happened really, that he was failed. Why? Because the answers which he has written were all wrong, है ना. हम भी जानते हैं कि दिस वाज नॉट द करेक्ट आंसर्स, है ना. हमें भी नहीं पता है कि काउंसिल ऑफ चेल्सिडन क्या थी, बस. लेकिन इसका ये आंसर नहीं है कि मैं उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं जानता हूँ ना. सो ही सेड दैट हाउ हैप्पी ही वाज विद हिज ओन इग्नोरेंस, and that's why he has went out of that room, that examination hall, in a very proud, in a very easy and in a very happy manner. So this is it for the day. Thank you.